by a little each day. A little earlier.
I thought we were getting later and later each day.
We started getting later, but now we're going earlier and earlier.
It's getting darker and darker.
That trend. Okay. Jai Saparikar Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Radha Govinda Jiyo Ki Jai Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Jiyo Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiyo Ki Jai Shri Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Jai Shri Shri Nitai Gauranga Ki Jai Jai Shri Nrsimha Bhagavan Ki Jai Jai Shri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Shri Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Shri Bhakti Rakshak Shri Dhara Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Namo Mahabhadanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayane Kalau Kalmashanashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Ajanulambita Bhujo Kanakavadato Samkirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Jugadharma Palo Bande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Bande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Gaudodai Pushpavanto Chitro Shamdo Tamonudo Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Bhaktya Vihina Aparadha Lakshay Kshiptascha Kamari Taranga Madhye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanna Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam Hadevika Kubaragada Gadaya Dyavacha Yache Nipatya Bhuvidandava Dudvatarti Asya Prasadam Abudasya Janasya Kritava Gandharvike Tavagane Gananam Videhi Gandharvike Nijagane Gananam Videhi Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So first of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most beloved Diksha and Siksha Guru Devs. Nityalila Pravishto Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Shri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. And Nityalila Pravishto Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Shri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. And Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Shri Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And my Dandavat Pranams to all my Shiksha Guru Varga. My Dandavat Pranams to all of my Rupa Nuga Gaudiya Guru Varga. And my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. As it tells us stem.
We have many more friends. People.
Yeah, because it's coming from my... How many?
Six, 7, 8. Normally there's more.
Yeah. So, we're broadcasting on Facebook Live from California, United States, in the mountains, in a place called Badger, California. And it has been renamed as New Braj by our Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, who has visited here on his world tours every year that he came to the West, namely 15 years from 1996 until 2010, when he performed his final pastime of Samadhi. So we are discussing in our evening class here the commentary of Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur on the 2 verses of Sri Upadeshamrita of Srila Rupa Goswami that are describing the 6 activities that are harmful to bhakti and the 6 activities that are very favorable for bhakti. So we have been discussing the first 4. We're still just completing the end of the commentary on the 4th item. To begin with, we'll quote the verse. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyam agraha janasangascha lolyamcha shadbir bhakti vinashyati. So, we have 2.5 pages left. Actually, three pages left. In the commentary on Niyam Agraha. So, just a simple translation of the term Niyama Agraha, because it actually has two different ways in which the word Niyam Agraha can be divided in Sanskrit. It can be divided as Niyama Agraha and also Niyama Agraha. So, when it is divided as Niyama Agraha, then it means over-endeavoring, it means to give too much emphasis to the rules and the regulations according to one's position in Varnashram Dharma and so forth. And Niyam Agraha means to neglect, to follow the proper rules and regulations. So this is just a very surface understanding. But as we've been reading, Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur has gone into very great depth to understand how this applies in all different stages. How this term Niyamagraha can apply in the stage of Karma Kanda, in the stage of Jnana Kanda, in the very beginning stages of Bhakti, and this will go all through the different various levels of Bhakti. And it also means that there are two different necessary considerations that have to be applied. One is that the rules and regulations that are considered to be appropriate for the level that the devotee or the level that the practitioner is on, even from the very beginning stages of Varnashram Dharma, there is an adhikar, there is a qualification, and on that level of qualification, the living entity has certain prescribed niyamas, rules and regulations that should be followed. And there are also what are called nishedha, prohibitions, that should be followed as well on each level. So we have now reached pretty much nearly the end. It's quite a lengthy commentary on this verse. And we were already studying for the last few days about how all the rules and the prohibitions on the path of bhakti, how they are included in only one principal regulation. What is that? Smartavya satatam Vishnu, vismartavyo najatu chit, sarve vidi nishedasyur etayor eva kinkara. This is from the Padma Purana. And it says here that always remember Vishnu and never forget him. All the other prohibitions and all the recommendations, they are servitors of these two instructions. Smartavya satatam Vishnu. Remember always. Satatam means always. Smartavyam. One should always remember Vishnu. And vismartavyo na jatuchit. And one should never forget Vishnu at any time. Na jatuchit. Sarve vidhi nishedasyur. All the rules and regulations, the vidhis, and also all the prohibitions, the nishedhas, they are actually serving as a servant, a kinkara, to this principle of to always remember Krishna. So, what does Krishna himself say? All throughout the Bhagavad Gita, that one should fix their mind on him. They should always meditate upon him. They should make him the supreme goal of life. And at the very end of the Bhagavad Gita, what does he say? He says, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. This is actually Krishna's final instruction in the Bhagavad Gita. And when Krishna tells, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadharman Prityaja, that you should abandon all other dharmas and just always surrender to me, Sharanagati. And if one does this, then what will Krishna do? Krishna promises, Satyam te, he says, I promise you this. I'm telling you the truth. That if you just surrender to me alone, no one else, only you surrender to me. Sarvadharma prityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. Then, aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami. I will protect you against any kinds of sinful reactions. Do not fear. Ma suchaha. Do not fear. So, and then Krishna tells the verse that you should always think of me. Always think of me. Manmana. Bhavamad bhakto. Be my bhakta. Madhyaji. Worship me. Mam namaskuru. Offer your obeisances to me. Mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. I promise you this, O Arjuna, because you are actually very dear to me. Priya, you are my very dear friend. So I'm promising you this, that by doing these four things, Mam eva ishyasi, you will come to me. You will come to me. So our Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, he has emphasized that this verse, these four instructions by Krishna, are actually the fruit of the process of surrender. This is the fruit. If one is surrendering, then this fruit will gradually be attained by practicing bhakti, where one will always think of Krishna. So, yes, I'm going to catch up to the point where we left off. Types of Sharanagati. The symptom of persons who have attained Shraddha, faith, the symptoms is that they are surrendered, Sharanagata, unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. That's the symptom. If someone has attained Shraddha, then they'll be surrendered to the lotus feet of Krishna. But Sharanagati is of two types, for householders and for renunciants. So Hari Bhakti Vilas gives a collection of regulations to be observed by householders who have attained this stage of Sharanagati. So Hari Bhakti Vilas, we read this yesterday. Sanatana Goswami has prescribed. So in this same scripture, by Hari Bhakti Vilas, the observance of Shiv Chaturdasi and other vratas, they're also mentioned. Of those regulations, the surrendered renunciants, they will follow those that are applicable. Then symptoms of a devotee with unalloyed surrender. What are his symptoms? As both householders and renunciants gradually progress in their sadhana, they attain unalloyed surrender. And at that time, the regulations they must respectively follow become somewhat different when they attain full surrender. In this stage, one gradually progresses in sadhana, and thus one-pointed surrender to Sri Krishna arises. Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, offers the following perspective on this topic. Jnana nishto virakto va, madbhakto vanapekshakaha, salingan ashramams tyaktva, chared avidhi gochara. So Krishna is telling to Uddhava in the 18th chapter of the 11th canto, he's telling, my devotee who does not desire monistic knowledge, renunciation, liberation, or anything else is not bound by the regulations of any ashram. Interesting what Krishna is telling. He continues, Krishna says, having left his ashram and its symbols, and being situated beyond the rules and the prohibitions of the Vedic scriptures, he roams freely according to his own will. I'm going to read the verses that are being quoted here. There's a few more, and then we'll discuss. And this is another verse is being quoted from Hari Bhakti Vilas. Ekantitam gatanantu Shri Krishna charanabjayo bhakti svata pravarteta tad vignai kim vratadibhi. Bhakti herself manifests within the hearts of those who have become one-pointed to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, and therefore such persons give no consideration to observing vratas or any other regulations. For them, such things are obstacles. Then from Srimad Bhagavatam again, 11th canto. Namaye kanta bhaktanam guna doshod bhava guna sadunam samachittanam buddhe param upeyusham. My unalloyed premi bhaktas have no relation with the piety and the impiety resulting from observing rules and prohibitions. Because these Mahatmas who possess equal vision have already attained the absolute truth by dint of their intelligence. Then the next are two verses quoted again from Hari Bhakti Vilas. Evam ekantinam praya kirtanam smaranam prabho kurvatam paramapritya krityam anyan narochate vihite shveva nityeshu pravartante swayam hite ityadye kantinam bhakti bhati mahatmyam likitam hitat. For the most part, one-pointed and surrendered devotees engage in chanting the names of Sri Krishna, Krishna Kirtan, and remembering him, Krishna Smaran, with great love. Consequently, they have no taste for the regulations prescribed for devotees of a lesser qualification. Although they are sometimes seen to observe the standard daily rules by their own desire, they are not obliged to follow any regulations, nor are they considered to be engaged in niyama agraha. This is mentioned in the 8th verse of Upadeshamrita, and it is the glory of one-pointed devotees. That is, their greatness is in no way diminished if they do not perform the duties prescribed for others. So, we've read these verses. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur is now telling here what is the purport, the general purport of the verses that we just read. The purport here is that whenever great personalities situated on a higher step follow the regulations prescribed for those on a lower step, it is by their own desire. By his own desire, a person who possesses the qualification to perform jnana, he follows varnashram, which is included within the qualification to perform karma. He is not obliged by any rules, any vidhi. So he's given an example. Remember how from karma then there's jnana. So jnana is on a higher level of qualification. And he's saying here that a person who possesses the qualification, he may follow varnashram. Now following varnashram rules for those on the level of karma. But he's doing this, he possesses the qualification to perform jnana. He may follow varnashram, which is included within the qualification to perform karma. He is not obliged by any rules, any vidhis. So similarly, by his own will, a person qualified to perform bhakti observes the regulations prescribed for those qualified to perform karma or jnana. In other words, although he is not subject to such rules and prohibitions, he follows them according to his own desire. So in the same way, although a one-pointed devotee who is situated on the highest platform of bhakti, he may follow the regulations of karma, jnana, or those prescribed for ordinary sadhana bhakti, he cannot be considered a niyamagrahi. So that means one who adheres to the regulations of a lower stage. Because we had that whole discussion. That's a disqualification if somebody is qualified for a higher level, but they still adhere to the qualifications of a lower stage. But in this case, it's not niyamagraha. It's not a fault. Why not? So, because since even while doing so, adhering to rules and regulations of a lower stage, even while doing so, he remains engaged in one-pointed bhajan of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna according to his own independent mood. Sadhakas who give up niyamagraha and they begin to observe regulations, very quickly they traverse the path of advancement. Yes. 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 So the general principle here, which is being mentioned in each one of these verses being quoted from 11th Canto of Bhagavatam and Hari Bhakti Vilas, is that when bhakti herself manifests within the hearts of those who have become one-pointed to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, so at that time, therefore such persons, they give no consideration to observing vratas or any other regulations, and for them, such things, they're obstacles. And Krishna is also telling that his premi bhaktas, who have unalloyed prem for him, they have no relation with the piety and the impiety resulting from observing rules and prohibitions. Why? Because these Mahatmas who possess equal vision, they've already attained the absolute truth by dint of their intelligence. So, in completing this section, there's only one more paragraph to read, but we can see that when one gains high-level qualifications in the path of bhakti, at that time, they will not be dependent upon rules and regulations in lower levels. And in terms of niyam agraha, they have no fault there, because they've already attained the highest perfection, which transcends. They're not bound to perform and so forth of lower levels. So find the final instruction Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving. He says, the instruction given here is that sadhakas attain the qualification for a higher step while following the regulations of their current qualification. So what does that mean? That means that if someone is properly following on the current qualifications that they have, the regulations, then automatically they're going to be eligible for elevation to the next higher step. And at that time, they are not so insistent about observing the regulations of the previous steps. It is advisable for every sadhaka to remember and to ascend the stairway. Soul, bhajan, characterized by and kirtan of Sri Krishna. So that ends the discussion. One thing is that here Bhaktivinoda Thakur has mentioned the section we just read. Telling. The 8th verse of Sri Upadeshamrita, who is it meant for? Who can follow the instructions of that 8th verse? What is the 8th verse telling? It is telling how a person who is now qualified to do 24-hour bhajan in the residing in Braja, how he can be absorbed 24 hours a day in what? Tannama Rupa Charitadi Sukhinanu Smrityo Kramena Rasana Manasi Niyojya Tishtan Braje Tad Anuragi Jananu Gami Kalam Nayed Akilam Iti Upadesha Sadam. Here, Rupa Goswami has summarized. He has taken the essence, Iti Upadesha Sadam. He's taken the very essence of all instructions. Rupa Goswami wrote this verse. How, when one comes to these higher stages, which higher stages? Oh, when he comes to the stage of ruchi and asakti. Then at that stage, he can be absorbed in hearing and chanting and remembering. Nama Rupa Charitadi means the name, form, and Charita Adi, qualities, and then Adi means pastimes and all the other stimulus which appear in the elevated devotee's heart. Which stimulus? All of his associates in Braj, his pastimes in Braj, his qualities, and everything concerning Lord Sri Krishna's eternal Braj Leela. And Rupa Goswami is describing that use all of his time for this. Akilam. Kramena rasana manasi braje tad anuragi jananugami kalam nayed akilam. The word kalam means nayed. One should utilize how much time? Akilam. All of one's time. In doing this, living in Braj, being completely absorbed 24 hours a day, and under the direction, under the guidance of the Anuragi Jan. That means Anuragi and Anugami. So the Anugami means the followers, the Anugas, which Anugas, Rupanuga, Vaishnavas, who are following the eternal associates who appeared in this world as the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, beginning with Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and so forth. So following them, being under their guidance, and the eternal Anuragi, those who have transcendental love and affection for Krishna, and they possess rag in their hearts. Those are Krishna's eternal associates in Goloka Vrindavan. So, this is the highest level. And when a devotee can come to these stages in this level, then his deep, deep Shraddha gradually transforms into Bhav and then praying. So, in this way, Bhaktivedanta Thakur, he has illuminated this particular item from the Vedeshamrita. Now we're going to come to the fifth item mentioned in that verse. What is the fifth item? Jana Sangha. So, Jana Sangha means associating with those who are averse to bhakti. Jana. Actually, the word jana, it means persons. But in this connection, it means the ordinary persons of this world, they're actually averse to bhakti. So to associate with them, it will affect one's bhakti. Now, Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur begins by saying that the word jana, it refers to people, both men and women. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Sri Rupa Goswami has written, Sadho Sangha Swato Vare. That means a sadhak with saintly persons who are more advanced than himself. So here, this is one of the prescriptions for Swataha means than one's own self, and Vara means superior or greater than one's own self. Sadhu Sangha Swato Vare. So a sadhak should associate with saintly persons who are more advanced than himself. In all respects, naturally more advanced, karmis and jnanis. So Krishna is mentioning, 7th chapter, 28th verse, he's mentioning that Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvanva moha nirmukta vajante mam dridha vrataha. So here's the word dridha vrataha. What does that mean? Dridha vrataha means firm vow. Dridha vrata. He says, bhajante mam dridha vrata. Krishna's talking about the persons who are worshipping him unfailingly, dridha vrata, with firm vow. But what happened in those persons who engage in worshipping Krishna with dridha vrata? What was their previous experience before? He says, yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam. So this means jananam punya karmanam. It means many lifetimes of very pious activities, punya karma. And also to antagatam papam. Antagatam papam means that their papas, all of their sins and their sinful reactions, actually been these pious activities for many lifetimes, and through that, so many of their sinful reactions have been, and then they dvandva moha nirmukta. They're actually freed, nirmukta, from what? Duality, and also moha. So they're free from duality and illusion, and then he says, bhajante mam dridavataha. Those persons, then they can worship me with firm vow, strong determination, firm determination. Now, a bhakti sadhaka is in all respects naturally more advanced than the karmis and jnanis, and then Bhaktivedanta Thakur quoted this verse in that context. Now he says, because devotees become freed from the delusion of the duality of sin and piety, after completely surrendering to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, it follows that the activities are also fully pure. Freed from moha and dvandva, delusion. So, it follows activities under delusion or the illusion of duality, activities are pure. They do not possess the tendency to perform sinful acts. That tendency is not there in them. Being under the shelter of the omniscient Lord, their fund of knowledge is not poor like that of the karmis and the jnanis. No, they have so much great fund of knowledge. And faith, shraddha in Krishna bhakti, it develops as a result of what? Sukriti, spiritual merit. Yes. Shraddha, faith in Krishna bhakti, develops as a result of sukriti over the course of many births. We were discussing that one day. Remember that? We were discussing about how does bhakti come? Bhakti bhakta. When they get the sangha, the association, Bhagavad Bhakti of Bhagavan Krishna association attained. Then he says, Sat Sangha Prapyate Pumbir. You are attained Sukrita Sanchitai. From Sukritis that have accumulated from Purva Sanchitai. It's exactly what Krishna is saying here. He's saying, Jananam Punya Karmanam. that someone has done this punya karma for many lives. Reactions have been destroyed, you see. So, faith, shraddha, in Krishna bhakti, it develops as a result of what? Spiritual merit, sukriti, which is accumulated over the course of many births. So devotees, therefore, perform righteous acts. Righteous. What doubt can remain about this? He's asking. Because they're in that pure position. Therefore, whatever acts that they're performing, they're very righteous acts. So, upon the awakening of Shraddha, one naturally obtains a taste for what? When one Shraddha awakens, what does one naturally obtain a taste for? Satsanga, the association of saintly persons. What cannot be achieved through, he's asking a question. What cannot be achieved through satsanga? Is there anything that cannot be achieved through satsanga? So now, Bhagavan himself glorifies its importance. The importance of satsanga. This is from the Adi Purana. So Krishna himself is telling to Arjuna in this Adi Purana. Ye me bhakta jana partha, na me bhaktas chate janaha, mad bhaktanam chaye bhaktas, te me bhakta tama mataha. So he says, O Partha, those who claim to be my devotees are not my actual devotees, but those who are devotees of my devotees, they are my true devotees. Then the necessity of sadhu sangha. In the Hari Bhakti Vilas, it states darshana sparshanalapa. This is in regards to the necessity of sadhu sangha, of satsanga. It's very necessary. What is that necessity? Okay. Darshana sparshanalapa saha vasadi kshanat bhakti punanti krishnasya sakshad api chapukasham. So this means a mere moment of seeing, of touching, of speaking to, or associating with the devotees of Krishna purifies even dog eaters. That's what this verse is saying. Yes. Pukkasham. That means dog eater. Sakshad apicha pukkasham. Darshana sparshanalapa sahavasa dibikshanat. Yes. Even a moment. Here it says kshanat. Kshanat means for a moment. How powerful is that? To see, touch, speak to, or associate with the devotees of Krishna. It's so powerful that even if a person is a dog eater, they can become completely purified by this. Many examples in Shastra. And we always remember Mrigadi the hunter, right? How Narada Muni delivered him, right? So this is all concerning how Krishna is glorifying sadhu sangha. Now in the Srimad Bhagavatam 7th canto, 5th chapter, actually this is the verse spoken by Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj said, Naisham matistavad urukramam grim sprishatyanarta pagamo yadartaha mahiyasam padarajo bhishekam Niskinshananam navrinita yavat. So this is in those group of verses that Prahlad Maharaj told to his father Hiranyakashipu. And at the end of this, actually this is, and he said, then after Hiranyakashipu heard this verse, what did he do? He threw Prahlad off of his lap onto the floor. And then he started severely chastising him. And after that, he said, okay, kill him. So this is the last verse that Prahlad Maharaj spoke in the sequence of about 3-4 verses. He said, the intelligence of those who do not consider the ultimate goal to be the dust of the lotus feet of great personalities who possess prema for Bhagavan and who are without material attachments, that intelligence of those kind of persons, it cannot touch the lotus feet of Bhagavan, the destroyer of all anarthas. So here, Bhaktivedanta Thakur is saying that bhakti cannot be infused into the heart of fallen persons who lack the association of Bhagavan's devotees. Satsanga is absolutely necessary for sadhakas. Absolutely necessary. And therefore, we should understand that the word janasanga, here, it is referring to the association of persons who are devoid of bhakti. So that's how he's opened up this chapter, that janasanga, what is sangha? And what is the most fortunate and most exalted sangha? And those persons who have no inclination toward bhakti, to associate with them, it is called janasanga, and it is very detrimental. Now, the next section is saying the necessity of avoiding asatsanga. So there are two kinds of sangha. What are they? Satsanga and asatsanga. We just heard about the satsanga. Now, why is it necessary to avoid asatsanga? This is a very important topic because a lot of devotees, they're not very clear on this. Not very clear of being aware at why it is very necessary to avoid asatsanga. And they throw themselves headlong into asatsanga. Now, let's hear what Bhaktivedanta Thakur has to say about this. Why is it necessary to avoid asatsanga? So Srila Rupa Goswami has ordained that abandoning the association of persons who are averse to Krishna, he has ordained this as one of the limbs of bhakti. This is actually one of the limbs of bhakti. Here he gives the quotation from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and he says, Sangha Tyago Vidurena Bhagavad Vimukayar Janaya. This is the actual words written by Rupa Goswami in regards to avoiding the association or abandoning the association of Krishna. What does this mean? It says Bhagavad Vimukayar Janaha. That means Bhagavad or Krishna, Bahirmukha, Vimukha, that means they're averse to Krishna. So one should give up Sangatyaga. One should give up the association of persons who are opposed to Bhagavan. Those who desire to attain Krishna Bhakti, they must, before all else, they must renounce the association of persons who are averse to Krishna. This means they should not relate with such persons through the activities of bhakti mentioned in the 4th verse of Upadeshamrita. That's coming up. Dadati, pratigrinati, and like that. They should not. That's what it means. They should renounce the association of persons who are averse to Krishna. This means that they should not relate with such persons through the activities of bhakti mentioned in the 4th verse of Upadeshamrita, like giving or receiving gifts, speaking to or hearing from them on any confidential subject matter, feeding them, or being fed by them. Conversing with such persons in the course of ordinary worldly dealings, that does not qualify as sangha. This is important. I was mentioning this some class previously. What constitutes sangha? So he's saying that just to converse with such persons in the course of ordinary worldly dealings, it does not qualify as sangha. Rather, it is considered sangha when such dealings are full of a binding affection. Then it's considered sangha. Now, it is essential for every practitioner of bhakti to know how many types of persons exist who are averse to Bhagavan. So he gives a list here. It's very essential. How many persons actually exist who are averse to Bhagavan? Therefore, although we do not desire to do so, we are listing them here. They are of 7 types. 7 types. Number 1. You hearing this? Everyone? Everyone's hearing? 7 types of what? Persons who are averse to Bhagavan. 7 different categories. First category, monists and atheists. So he says, like, monists mean Mayavadis, and Nashtika means non-believing atheists. So those 2 are in one category. Now, how do we know a person's an atheist?
Well, they can tell you, I don't believe in God.
Right.
Or that I am God.
Right, that's the monist, the Mayavadi. We can generally see by their symptoms. You can see by their symptoms. You know that in general, the mass of people, in general, they have an inclination to believe in God. But they have very, very bad association. Their culture does not support it, so many things. So when we preach the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we're approaching so many people publicly. But you can see that persons who are pious, they have certain symptoms, and they're willing to listen, to discuss, like that. But atheistic persons, they immediately become very challenging. And they want to become very argumentative, and they want to dismiss you see. Anyway, let's read this list of 7. So the second category are called materialists. And the Sanskrit name for materialist is what? No, it means Vishayi.
Sense enjoyment.
Yes, a Vishayi means materialistic sense enjoyment, which the mass of people are basically Vishayis, right?
The word vish means poison. Anyway.
So then the third category, Vishaya means sense objects. Vishaya means sense objects.
Okay.
A Vishayi is somebody who's trying to consume sense objects. Yeah. Number 3, those who associate with materialists. What are they called? Vishayi Sangis. They like to have Sangha with Vishayis. Okay. Number 4, the opposite gender. The opposite gender is one category of persons who are averse to Bhagavan, and it says for the term yoshit. Yoshit means woman, but there is a what do you call it? There's a note, a subnote. And it says, although the literal translation of the word yoshit is women, the explanation below that the intended meaning is, quote, inappropriately associating with the opposite gender. That's going to be explained. But just a footnote is there so that you can understand it goes both ways. For men, it's women. For women, it's men, like this. But what is that association? Inappropriate. Inappropriate association. So that's the 4th category. The 5th category is those who illicitly associate with the opposite gender, Yoshit Sangis. Yoshit Sangis. Number 6, those who make a show of following religious principles. They're called Dharma Dvajis. That term is also used by Mahaprabhu when he was instructing Rupa Goswami. In the section, in the very beginning of Mahaprabhu's instructions to Rupa Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there, Lord Chaitanya is dividing the human population into 2 categories. First of all, there's 400,000 species of humans in the universe. And he says that half of them, they're uncivilized. So already 200,000 different species, they're uncivilized, which means they're not adherent to the Vedic civilization. Then the other half of the 200,000, he says, they're also divided into different categories. They may follow some prescriptions of Dharma, but he calls them Dharma Dvajis. And that means they make a show of following religious principles, for show.
Christian preachers are like that.
Some of them can be like that, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we can find them in all religions, you know. These are just mentioning, and then he's going to give a section for each one of these and expand upon them. So the last one are uncivilized and foolish persons of atrocious conduct. Yeah. Uncivilized and foolish persons of atrocious conduct. What does that mean? Durachari mudha buddhi antyaja. Antyaja means outcast from Vedic civilization. Durachari means very bad behavior, bad conduct, atrocious conduct. Mudha buddhi. Mudha, we know the word mudha, right? Yes. Yes. Mudha buddhi. That means foolish persons. Okay. So those are the 7 categories, and it is essential for every practitioner of bhakti to know how many types of persons exist who are averse to Bhagavan. So now comes the first category, the monists and the atheists. Mayavadis do not accept the eternal names, forms, qualities, pastimes, and potencies of Bhagavan. They do not accept. And they believe that the living entity, they believe to be illusory. That the living entity doesn't exist. It's illusory. Therefore, according to them, the living entity's existence is not eternal. They do not even accept bhakti to be eternal. Rather, they consider it merely a provisional medium to attain jnana. That's what they think of bhakti. The entirety of the Mayavadi's Siddhanta, the entirety of it, is opposed to the principles of Shuddha Bhakti Tattva, pure devotional service. Their entire philosophy. So for this reason, bhakti eventually vanishes from the association of Mayavadis. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Lila, chapter 2, Srila Rupa Goswami is quoted as follows. Vaishnava hoya jeva sharirak bhashya shune sevya sevaka bhav chadi apanare ishvara mani. What this means is that the Vaishnavas who hear the Sharirak Bhashya, that means the Mayavad commentary of the Vedanta Sutra, what happens? They give up their mood of being a servant of their master Bhagavan and instead consider themselves to be Bhagavan. So those who do not accept the truth of a supreme controller as described in the Vedas, they're atheists. And their heart is contaminated with dry logic. Associating with them thus diminishes one's bhakti. So both categories, Mayavadi and atheist, are being covered in the first category here. So is that by Rupa Goswami, where he's saying that if a Vaishnava hears this Mayavadi commentary that was given by Shankaracharya, it's called Sharirak Bhashya, right? What happens as a result of hearing? They give up their mood of Sevya and Sevaka. Sevya, Sevaka, Bhav. That means the mood, the bhav, of being a sevak, a servant, and of being a Sevya Bhagavan, Bhagavan who is to be served and worshipped. Mayavadism causes that to happen. So instead, what happens? They consider themselves to be Ishvara. Apanare Ishvara Mani. They think, oh, I am Ishvara. So obviously that is not favorable. I'll just read one more short section here now. And then we'll stop for today. The second category are materialists. The association of materialists, of Vishayis. What's a Vishayi?
Materialist.
That's right, materialistic sense enjoyer. So the association of Vishayis, materialists, is extremely dishonorable. Those who are always absorbed in the sense objects, Vishay, they are full of criticism of others, of envy and violence. Quarreling and hankering for sense objects is their life. The more they engage in sense gratification, the more their thirst for enjoyment intensifies. They do not receive an opportunity to hear and chant about Krishna's transcendental pastimes. Whether they engage in pious or in impious activities, they always remain far from the truth of the soul, Atma Tattva. So Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya 6 mentions Vishayir anna kaile malan hoy man, malan mana hoyle nahi Krishna rasmaran. The mind of a person who eats food prepared by a materialist, it becomes contaminated mind. He cannot remember Krishna. Those who externally sense to maintain their life, but they remain absorbed in contemplating Atma Tattva, higher position than sense gratifiers who are attached to the fruits of their action. So here, at the end, there is a concession being given, right? They externally accept the sense objects for what purpose? Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Govinda Jiva Ki Jai Jai Shri Nitai Gauranga Ki Jai Jai Jagannath Ki Subhadra Sudarshan Chakuji. Just that curtain by Jagannath, a little bit more. I have to close on the right side. So, those who externally accept sense objects in order to maintain their life, contemplating Atma Tattva. So, they are sense gratified or attached to the fruits of their action.
But they're also considered materialists?
No. No, because like, for example, a devotee who is a householder, so he has the necessary sense in order to maintain his life. But he remains absorbed in contemplating Atma Tattva. What does Atma Tattva mean? The truth of the eternal soul. So he's not identifying all the time with his body like the gross materialists are. He has a different goal in life. Materialistic persons is just sense gratification is the ultimate goal. Like Prabhupada used to say, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. But this person, he does not become absorbed in the sense objects like a gross materialistic person does. Because like here it says, they do not receive, the materialists, they do not have the opportunity to hear and chant about Krishna's transcendental pastimes. And whether they engage in pious or in impious activities, they always remain far from the truth of the soul, Atma Tattva. So, but those who externally maintain their life, because you can't live without sense objects. They accept that, but they remain absorbed in contemplating Atma Tattva. So, they're situated in a much higher position than sense gratifiers who are attached to the fruits of their action. So that's his commentary on the second category of the 7 categories, right? And tomorrow we'll hear about the third category, people who associate with materialists. Okay, Sri Videshamritam Ki Jai. Sri Rupa Goswami Prabhu Bhaktivedanta Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Hare Jaya Sachi Jaya Gora Hari Sachinandan Jaya Gora Hari Sachinandan Jaya Gora Hari Sachinandan Jaya Gora He Gora He Gora He Gora He Gora He Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Jai Shri Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Gurudeva Ki Jai Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai Sachidananda Gaura Hari Ki Jai Shri Nityananda Mahajana Ki Jai Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai Shri Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Gopinath Madan Mohan Jiyo Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Pradevi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna